Story 1. The best I could do is convince locals that vaguely describing what I remember of science could help jumpstart the actual experts. Story 2. Get yourself to California as soon as possible. You have 49 years to pan as much gold as you can and keep your mouth shut about it. Story 3. This question is profound if people think about it. What skills do you have that are transferable with nearly no tools that you are currently familiar with? I personally have no idea and would probably fail before I manage to think clearly. Story 4. I have a Doctor of Philosophy degree in chemistry. I would start by inventing trinitrotoluene. It is a fairly simple synthesis, and causing explosions always generates profit. Then, I would produce penicillin from orange mold as a karmic payback for inventing trinitrotoluene 60 years too early. Aspirin is a straightforward synthesis that created one of the world's largest and most profitable companies on Earth, Bayer. Then there is the Bosch-Haber process. All of these would be achievable with equipment from the 19th century. That should cement my legacy. Story 5. Put some random liquid in a bottle, make a fancy elixir label, and start pyramid schemes along the East Coast. Story 6. Louis Pasteur would not be born for another 20 years, so I would have quite a while to figure out pasteurization. It would save many lives and prevent the spoiled milk scandal. Story 7. I am a nurse with some knowledge of music, handyman skills, and the history of medicine. I would begin by inventing the stethoscope, which should be relatively easy to create using available technology and inexpensive tools. Next, I would try to develop aspirin from willow bark and strong vinegar, penicillin from moldy bread, and tetracycline from streptomyces, the bacteria found in soil. Story 8. Sorry, Stanislavski and Chekhov. Apparently, dramatic theater and all those essays on scenic art were destined to be born in Brazil a split second earlier. And my magnum opus? Play titled A Gavoda. Story 9. I know where the old gold mines are. I am also an electrical engineer, so there is plenty I could invent with 1800s technology. My first idea would be to invent electronic communication. The telegraph, for example, was made in the 1830s. Story 10. Start a fancy little burger restaurant in New York City and call it McDonald's. The downside is this might accelerate the fall of Western civilization. Story 11. Some of you have missed the "with only the knowledge you have now" caveat. If you do not know how to invent electromagnetic induction now, you will not know how to do it then. Story 12. Well, I am a translator. That is not really a good living nowadays with everyone using Google Translate, but back then, Google Translate did not exist. I can also crochet, and not just lace but amigurumi, which are little plush animals. I guess a crochet cat would sell pretty well in those days. Story 13. I became a local blacksmith and offered to repair horseshoes and equipment. Eventually, I invented an ice maker and then built a time machine out of a locomotive. Story 14. Modern advertising techniques are highly refined, and we are exposed to them constantly. With a little thought, most people living in modern conditions could help make an 1800s company much more successful in marketing their product. Versioning and quality segmentation alone would be a novel technique in the 1800s. Story 15. Invent and then sell drinking straws, barbed wire, and paper clips way before their time. That should create enough of an organization to start harnessing other brains and knowledge for things I cannot create, like bicycles, brakes, and traffic lights. Then buy gold. Story 16. Whenever I see these, my first instinct is that I do not know enough, and I better learn some things just in case. Story 17. Sell the idea of programming a cotton gin with punch cards with a royalty built into the sale, then use $7 million to buy Alaska from the Russians. Story 18. Introduce French fries and hamburgers to the world. They are easy to make as long as you know how, which is not hard. Story 19. Play the long game. Apprentice to a midwife. Learn. Move to a bigger city. Wash your hands. Your reputation for not killing mothers and babies spreads. Move up to delivering titled babies. Profit by being given an estate. Use knowledge of germ theory discreetly to raise healthier and bigger livestock. Make money. Make a deal with a neighboring estate to use your land in exchange for a yearly fee paid in advance. Move to a New England colonial town destined to become a government hub and by land with a spring on it. Stay out of politics and religion. Raise sheep, sell wool, and avoid cotton. Keep washing those hands and using boiling water to lose less livestock and avoid dysentery. Live long enough to die rich. Story 20. I wake up in the year 1800. I'm 38, armed with the knowledge of 2025. Mathematics, physics, chemistry, medicine, technology, strategy, oil, gold, and gas locations. I know how the next 2 centuries unfold, and I'm ready to rewrite them. First stop, University of Glasgow. I ask to speak to the professors. They laugh. I challenge them publicly. I solve problems they haven't even conceived of. I derive Maxwell's equations before Maxwell is born. I talk about atoms, electrons, quantum states, relativity, and I back it all up with mathematics that no one alive can refute. They let me in. Begrudgingly, maybe, but once I start teaching them things that seem like magic, that changes. I form 3 elite teams: chemistry, physics, and applied technology. Together, we drag humanity into the modern era. In chemistry, I sketch the periodic table from memory, predict unknown elements, and explain atomic weights with precision. We isolate aluminium, synthesize plastics, and produce medicines that save lives. Penicillin? That's done before the Napoleonic Wars are over. I explain hygiene, germ theory, and sterilization. Infection rates plummet. Lifespans climb. Famines stop. In physics, I trigger a renaissance. I explain electromagnetism, build motors and generators, and plant the seeds for quantum mechanics and relativity. I describe the photoelectric effect and the dual nature of light. I bring radio waves and early electronics into reality 80 years ahead of schedule. I light up cities before they even dream of gas lamps. In engineering, I make steam engines obsolete within 2 decades. I introduce the internal combustion engine, explain the Otto cycle, and lead the development of early automobiles. I talk metallurgy, gear ratios, fuel combustion, and even sketch blueprints for electric hybrids. While they're still obsessed with horsepower, I'm building the skeleton of the automotive future. In mathematics, I clean house. I rigorously define calculus, bring in matrix theory, linear algebra, set theory, and probability. I introduce statistical modeling, regression, Fourier analysis, and concepts that won't be understood for another century. I use mathematics as a universal tool to unify disciplines, predict outcomes, and optimize everything from engineering tolerances to population health. In medicine, I save millions. I explain how diseases spread. I initiate vaccinations with proper understanding. I promote antiseptics, develop early antibiotics, X-rays, magnetic resonance imaging, microscopes, and introduce insulin therapy for diabetes. Surgery becomes safer, diagnostics more accurate, and public health dramatically more effective. I patent strategically. I invest in coal, steel, railroads, then oil and electricity. I build a financial empire. Everyone gets an education. The brightest are my students, and together we develop the world. I license inventions instead of selling them, create holding companies, and play the long game. Within 30 years, I am the Industrial Revolution, and the world is smarter. But let's be honest. I'm a 38-year-old woman who shows up out of nowhere, claiming to know everything about everything. I challenge men in power, speak in numbers they don't understand, and succeed too fast. I don't act submissive. I don't keep quiet. So who am I kidding? I'll be called hysterical, dangerous, unnatural. I'll be dismissed, feared, and when I won't shut up, I'll be locked away in a mental institution. Story 21. Let us be realistic. My options as a woman in the year 1800 would not be abundant. Being a history enthusiast might finally pay off. I could become a wealthy person's personal psychic. Alternatively, I could use my relaxed 21st century values to impress a wealthy man so much that he decides to marry me. Story 22. I would probably invent a new type of wagon that is raised in the front for no reason. I would call it the typhoid lean. Story 23. In 1800, I would go find Benjamin Franklin. explain the situation, and then use his influence to develop institutions in the federal government that would not have become reality until over a century later. Story 24. I would be an amazing courtesan and medicine woman. I would write books, make remedies, take wealthy lovers, and secure my savings. Then I would die in a chateau somewhere. Story 25. The better question is, how do you survive to the end of the week? The answer is quite likely, you do not. If you do, you can try for a year. If you are still alive then, maybe you can start considering how to get rich, but more likely you will still be struggling to stay alive. Story 26. Invent the rifle cartridge. It took humanity a long time and dozens of bad ideas to develop a design made of just 4 parts. Story 27. I would probably do what Joseph Smith did, hopefully without becoming a martyr, and start a false religion. I can pretend to read words off a stone in a hat too. This would probably be easier to do than attempt to recreate any of the technology that we have today. Story 28. You would probably be impoverished and not taken seriously by any banker as a poor person, so you need something that is easy to do without resources. I would try my hand at making penicillin. Once I figured it out, I would sell it as best I could, and as soon as I scraped together the money, I would get a patent on it. Story 29. Start a small gunpowder manufactory in the Northeast United States. Use my modern understanding of measurements and chemistry, along with sufficient knowledge of modern pyrotechnic safety, to make very good gunpowder despite impure and inconsistent ingredients. I also know how to run a scientific study, employing rigorous trial and error, iterative variations, and parameter sweeps. I believe I could produce the best gunpowder on the eastern seaboard within 12 years. The DuPont company will not come to exist, but I am confident history will fill the vacuum when it is time for a gunpowder company to pivot to tires later on. The goal is to make a fortune with my skill set and knowledge in 1800, while influencing alternate history. I think all of this is feasible with no major obstacles, just in time for the War of 1812. I would make my fortune supplying the United States with gunpowder during the war. Story 30. Build pressure vessels to the American Society of Mechanical Engineers Code. The American Society of Mechanical Engineers was founded in 1880 in response to numerous steam boiler pressure vessel failures. If I had started building pressure vessels to code before there was a code, I would have the only pressure vessels to never fail. They would be expensive but also the best. Story 31. Step 1. Abandon your child. Step 2. Become an oilman. Step 3. Drainage. Step 4. Drink a milkshake. Story 32. People would be very confused by me. I'm like a blue belt, generously to amateur in almost all of science. I can present all sorts of amazing theories that we know are true, some of which are cornerstones of our technology. Others could be verified by someone actually knowledgeable. I can even largely explain the experiments to do, just not the detailed methods beyond that. Von Neumann architecture, computing in general, game theory, the internet, Fermi's paradox, quantum mechanics, black holes, physics, all of space-time, vaccines, DNA basics, and so on. I'd be this person who seems to have every world-changing idea but can only explain them at an amateur level. Story 33. Everyone will think I am a witch if I do anything with my knowledge, so I will just write good stories. Titanic as a novel would make good money in my opinion. Story 34. Scare people with knowledge until I accidentally cause a witch trial that outshines the rest and am probably burned at the stake. There is a chance I end up as a hired hand for some aging founding fathers and simply make money from inherent knowledge and untapped skill, but it would require a lot of luck. Story 35. Since I am a woman, I cannot vote, own property, or conduct business in my own name under the laws at the time. I would have to use my infertility and modern sexual morals to secure a Rothschild. Then, I would advise him on how to invest and what to buy. He would quickly notice that I was always right. The advantage of having degrees in history, gentlemen. Story 36. I am a physics and mathematics teacher. I do not know anything I know that was not already known by academics of the time and could be useful. I could tell you all about the standard model and imaginary number lines, but without a calculator, Wolfram, and access to the formulas I need, I am somewhat useless. I can also rebuild a motorcycle engine, but I could not design one. I do not think I would be rich. I might end up a poor inventor. That said, it is common knowledge nowadays that sexually transmitted diseases exist, and Giovanni Fabbroni and Joe Goodyear did a lot of interesting work with latex and rubber from the 1790s to the 1830s. I could somehow contact them and invent actually useful condoms. That might not make me rich, but it could help stop acquired immunodeficiency syndrome and many other problems. Story 37. I am brown. I would be immediately enslaved and then die of tetanus, dysentery, cholera, or malaria. The year 2025 is not great, but I will take it over the 1800s. Story 38. If I wake up tomorrow in the year 1800 in the area where I live now, I would either die of starvation or be killed by a tribal warrior. Well, I guess that beats paying bills. Story 39. The assembly line had not yet been invented. It is common knowledge. Decide on one mass-produced product you want to sell and dominate the market with better efficiency and quality. Story 40. I have read many books about early explorers during this period. They had no solution for the most dangerous aspect of long-term nautical travel: scurvy. I would make a tincture and sell it to the British Admiralty. At the time, they had discovered that vitamin C was key, but did not realize that heating citrus to concentrate it significantly degraded the vitamin C. Rather than using heat, I would use alcohol to preserve it. The other solution should have been sauerkraut. Story 41. Step 1. Do not die by lynching or from a bounty hunter. This step will be present throughout my plan because it is an ongoing issue inherent to my identity. I am not white. In fact, I am indigenous. In the United States, active bounties were placed on indigenous people during the 1800s. That is the extent of my plan, as surviving an active genocide is already a significant challenge. Story 42. Straight-up crime. You could get away with a lot back then if you were smart about it. That is how most generational wealth starts. Swindlers and con artists are at the top of most wealthy family trees. Story 43. I currently have coronavirus disease 2019. Depending on how fast they close borders to Australia, we could experience the Australian plague of 1800. Story 44. I would be a slave or at least appear as a runaway slave. I do not know anything off the top of my head that would make me any money, but more importantly, I would have no allies to help me. Story 45. Just an idea, but I would let a reasonable understanding of American history be my guide. At first, do any job you can, as long as you can, and earn and save as much capital as possible. Then, 1. Find Samuel Morse and strongly suggest how a telegraph machine could work. Then propose the idea of a code that could be sent over the telegraph and interpreted on the other side of the line. Offer to split the profits with him, and allow him to name the code after himself. Earn, save, but do not spend capital. Then, 2. Find Samuel Colt and suggest how a revolver could work. Find a factory that can build the Colt revolver. Offer to let him name your idea after himself in exchange for splitting revenue from all government sales. Focus on selling to the United States Army, especially in the North. Then head to Illinois and 3. Find Abraham Lincoln and suggest alliances that will support abolishing slavery. Become a trusted advisor, eventually doing the same with Ulysses S. Grant. Become the exclusive revolver supplier to the United States Army. Continue earning and saving, but rarely spending your capital. Continue to accumulate. Then, 4. Find Alexander Graham Bell and suggest how a telephone could communicate across phone lines. Wash, rinse, and repeat. Story 46. I have good knowledge of successful gold claims in California. If I wake up in the same location, I am not far away. Story 47. Tell superstitious religious people that an angel led me to an ancient record written on gold plates in Reformed Egyptian, buried in the ground. The record is about Jesus coming to the Americas to preach to the former Jews living here, who built all the mounds. Thanks to God, through the power of special spectacles found with the book, I was able to translate the ancient record into King James English with colloquialisms. Make that special ancient book the cornerstone of your new religion, which you say is the restored one true church of Jesus Christ. Require members, by way of divine revelation, to turn over all their material property to build the one true Church of Christ. Once you manage that, wealth and revelation will make it possible for you to have relationships with any of the women around you, married or not. Manifest destiny was made for you. Story 48. Bicycles. I can probably convince a local blacksmith to make a rudimentary one, and it will amaze everyone since they were not invented until the 1820s. Should I bet on outcomes like the Battle of Waterloo or the American Civil War? Story 49. The only things I could see being useful are sanitation and germ theory. Convincing people that soap and hand sanitizer will make them healthy in the 1800s would be difficult. Medical knowledge is probably the most useful thing that would be easy to adapt to different times. Story 50. Honestly, basic math skills would get you pretty far 200 years ago, or knowing people who are going to invent something. Story 51. Getting rich is only a means to an end. Go to San Francisco just before the gold rush and set up a hardware store with an unusual supply of pickaxes and shovels. Buy a few plots with the early profits and hire men to work them. They can keep 40% of what they find. Nobody would be able to match that rate. Invest my profits in a public relations campaign and run for Congress. I would be seen as the wise soothsayer who always knew what was around the corner. Use that reputation to stop the Southern leaders from reintegrating into Congress and prevent 150 years of backward policies. Story 52. I would use my knowledge of chemistry to create as many products as possible containing small amounts of cocaine. Coca-Cola would have nothing on my empire of cocaine products. Story 53. Maintaining uncontaminated water is essential to public health. Contaminated water, especially with human waste, is a primary source of diseases such as typhus and cholera. Typhus is caused by bacteria often linked to poor sanitation, while cholera results from ingestion of water contaminated with Vibrio cholerae bacteria. Ensuring water supplies remain free of fecal contamination significantly reduces outbreaks of these deadly illnesses. Mosquitoes serve as reliable indicators of miasmas, noxious airs believed to cause recurrent fevers such as malaria and yellow fever. To avoid the miasmas and the diseases they cause, it is important to avoid areas with mosquitoes and prevent them from biting. This avoidance might explain how these diseases are transmitted. After such observations gain acceptance with the Royal Society, further preventive measures such as hand-washing and pasteurizing milk could be introduced to improve public health and reduce the spread of infectious diseases. Note: the storyline of Harry Potter follows a young wizard's journey to overcome dark forces, emphasizing themes of courage, friendship, and the fight against evil. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.